We are living in an age where comfort is worshipped and challenge is feared. But deep within the human body, within your nervous system, your hormones, your brain circuits, there is a design, a blueprint, a biological code wired not for ease, but for excellence. When we talk about unlocking mental dominance, we often overlook the simplest, most primal keys nature has given us. Cold is one of them. It is more than a discomfort, more than a punishment. It is a physiological trigger, an ancient doorway into transformation. The moment your skin touches cold water, a cascade begins. Receptors in the skin signal the spinal cord, which sends a message to the brainstem, activating the locus coeruleus, a small but powerful structure responsible for initiating the release of norepinephrine and dopamine. These are not just feel-good chemicals. They are the architects of your drive, your alertness, your capacity to lock in on a task and dominate it without hesitation. Dopamine, in particular, is a molecule of motivation. It is not about reward, it is about pursuit. It's what keeps a lion stalking prey. It's what kept warriors moving forward in the face of death. And it's what can be awakened in you through cold. Unlike artificial stimuli that cause dopamine spikes followed by crashes, sugar, social media, even applause, the dopamine increase from cold exposure is sustained. It doesn't drop after the event. It lingers, reinforcing a state of elevated readiness and internal strength. The mind becomes clearer, the body more alive, not because of magic, but because you are tapping into a God-given system, a divine design meant to fortify, to empower, to awaken. Cold strips away distraction. It forces presence, and in that presence, something sacred happens. The superficial layers of your psyche begin to burn away, and all that is left is your will, sharpened and pure. You stand in the cold not as a victim, but as a vessel. The suffering becomes sacred, the pain becomes a passage. And what does this mean in a world drowning in distraction, fatigue, and overstimulation? It means you have a natural, repeatable way to access your highest self. When you step into the cold deliberately, you're declaring to your body and your brain that you are the one in control. And the response is immediate. Dopamine levels rise up to 2. 5 times baseline, a surge that surpasses what most pharmaceutical interventions could ever deliver, yet comes without a cost, only the price of discomfort and the reward of dominion. This is neurochemical worship. This is physiology aligned with purpose. The cold does not lie. It demands truth, and it delivers power. Every breath you take in the cold is a prayer of resilience. Every second, a signal that you are choosing to rise above the flesh, above the fear, above the old patterns that kept you small. Cold is not just temperature. It is a teacher, a prophet, a purifier. The dopamine it releases is not accidental. It is precise, targeted, and transformative. You are not escaping the world. You are preparing to lead in it. When cold meets skin, it awakens more than just the surface. It lights a fire deep within the architecture of the nervous system. At the very core of this experience is norepinephrine, a molecule of divine precision, poured out by the locus coeruleus the moment the body senses the cold. This isn't just a chemical reaction. It is the mind's call to arms. Norepinephrine is the sharpened sword of the brain, slicing through fog, fatigue, and distraction. It raises your alertness, sharpens your attention, and elevates your mind into a state of heightened readiness. The moment you enter the cold, the body tightens, the breath shortens, and the brain ignites. You are not fading, you are awakening. Your perception expands, your vision narrows into focus, and all that is not necessary begins to fall away. This molecule was not given to you for comfort. It was forged in you for battle. It is the substance that allowed our ancestors to hunt in storms, to fight without sleep, to protect with unflinching clarity. And today, when cold water surrounds your body, you are resurrecting that lineage, reviving that holy code embedded in your DNA. Norepinephrine constricts blood vessels, preserves heat, and triggers a profound shift in mental state, one where urgency is not panic, but purpose. You're not escaping discomfort, you are charging into it. You are meeting the moment with fire in your blood and steel in your mind. What is often called stress in the modern world is in truth a misalignment, an untuned system. But when you use cold with intention, you bring that system into divine order. You don't drown in stress, you ride it, you command it, you become the architect of your internal state. You are not waiting for motivation, you are manufacturing it through discipline. This is the altar of the nervous system, and norepinephrine is the incense that rises. Cold becomes your cathedral, the plunge is your prayer. Your trembling is not weakness, it is the shedding of the old, the breaking of bondage, the renewal of your nervous covenant. The spike in norepinephrine is not random, it's a sacred signal from the body to the mind. Now is the time, now is the fight. And when you train yourself to walk into that cold over and over again, you're not just becoming stronger, you are becoming spiritually aligned with the very essence of vigilance and readiness. It teaches your brain how to focus on demand, how to enter intensity without fear, how to stay calm while the world screams. This is the protocol of warriors, of prophets, of those called not to comfort, but to conquest. And it does not come from theory, it comes from the deliberate act of stepping into the furnace of the cold and commanding the storm within. There is a sacred power in putting yourself into controlled discomfort. Cold exposure isn't just about bracing against the elements. It's about learning to master the internal storms that arise in the face of perceived threat. When you deliberately activate the stress response through cold, you are not traumatizing the system, you are training it. The very circuits in the brain and body that normally trigger fear, panic, or retreat begin to reshape themselves. What was once a reflex to escape becomes a capacity to endure. What once overwhelmed you becomes something you now regulate with breath, with focus, with presence. This is the foundation of resilience, not built through ease, but through repetition of controlled adversity. And cold is one of the most honest teachers of this truth. The moment your body hits that cold water, the sympathetic nervous system flares. Heart rate climbs, breathing becomes shallow, the body screams, "Get out," but you stay, and that decision to stay, that second, that moment, is where the rewiring begins. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for decision, making, and self-control, begins to assert itself over the limbic brain, where fear and flight are born. Neurons start to fire differently, new synapses are formed, the brain starts to learn that it can remain calm even as the body trembles. This is neuroplasticity in real time. This is not a theory. This is transformation written in the language of biology, sculpted in the fires of discomfort, and sealed through consistent exposure to challenge. By exposing yourself to voluntary stress, you are literally teaching your nervous system that it can survive intensity without shutting down. You become less reactive in everyday life. The email that used to trigger anxiety, the conversation that once raised your pulse, the moment of pressure that once clouded your thinking, these all begin to lose their power over you. Why? Because you've been somewhere harder. You've met your own edge and chosen not to retreat. You've stood in the freezing crucible and trained the body to breathe, trained the mind to command. What you once avoided, you now pursue with purpose. There is a divine paradox here. The more you seek comfort, the more fragile you become. But the more you willingly enter discomfort, the stronger your nervous system becomes calmer, more regulated, more focused. The modern world is filled with artificial ease, temperature, controlled rooms, digital distractions, convenience at every turn. But nature has not forgotten what you were built for. The cold does not flatter your ego. It does not bend to your preferences. It simply is, and in that truth, it gives you a chance to remember who you are and what you are made of. This isn't just about tolerance, it's about transformation. When you face the cold with intention, when you step into it knowing it will challenge every fiber of your being, you are choosing not just resilience, but revelation. You are choosing to train the mind to lead the body. One of the most overlooked superpowers in the human system is interoception. The ability to sense, interpret, and regulate what's happening inside your own body, not thoughts, not emotions, but raw signals, your heartbeat, your breath, the tightness in your chest, the fire in your gut. It is the awareness beneath awareness, and cold exposure awakens this internal sense like few other tools. When the body plunges into cold, all distractions vanish. Your focus is no longer outward. It is turned inward with absolute precision. Every heartbeat is magnified. Every breath becomes a battle cry. You are no longer lost in the noise of the world. You are locked into the truth of your physiology, and that is where mastery begins. This ability to detect and interpret your internal state is not a luxury. It is survival. It is discipline. It is spiritual alignment through somatic awareness. Interoception is what allows a warrior to slow their breath in the middle of combat. It's what allows a monk to sit still in the midst of chaos. It's what allows you to speak with clarity when fear is screaming inside you. And when you deliberately enter cold, you are training that system. The nervous system is being recalibrated to detect discomfort not as a signal to flee, but as a cue to focus. You begin to know your body not just as flesh and muscle, but as a sacred map. You feel the rise of panic, the tightening of the breath, the urge to escape, and you don't run. You meet it, you breathe through it. You begin to realize that what once felt overwhelming is nothing more than electrical signals, hormonal waves, patterns that can be observed and redirected. You are no longer hijacked by fear, you are leading it. This is not denial of emotion, it is dominion over it. The cold becomes a mirror to your internal world, showing you where your attention collapses, where your spirit flinches, where your endurance was merely a hope, not yet a practice. Interoception is the sacred sense that gives you the ability to turn awareness into authority. The ability to say, yes, I feel the chaos inside, but I will not be ruled by it. This is where internal strength becomes real, not imagined, not intellectualized, felt, commanded. Cold teaches you to feel the body fully and to remain, to resist the urge to retreat, to override the ancient circuits that say, this is too much. And each time you stay, each time you breathe through it, you carve a new path through the nervous system, one that doesn't lead to collapse, but to clarity. In that moment, you are not merely enduring, you are mastering. You are no longer confused by internal sensations. You understand them, you command them. You meet stress like a priest in the temple of the body, not with fear, but with reverence. The cold teaches you that your body is not your enemy, it is your instrument, and interoception is the string that tunes it. The human mind has been conditioned by comfort. It has been lulled into weakness by thermostats, soft chairs, and the lie that struggle is something to avoid. But the nervous system was not designed for luxury. It was forged in fire, carved through challenge, and awakened through adversity. Cold exposure reawakens this truth. It doesn't just shock the body, it reshapes the relationship you have with discomfort itself. What once seemed unbearable becomes familiar. What once made you flee now becomes your teacher. The same system that used to signal panic, your heartbeat rising, your breath tightening, your thoughts scattering now becomes the battlefield where courage is trained, where fear is recoded. The process is ancient. When you step into cold, your mind will scream, "Get out." Your instincts, shaped by thousands of years of survival, will demand escape. But when you override that impulse, you are not just practicing discipline, you are rewriting your programming. You are shifting your identity from one who is chased by fear to one who chases it down. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change, is most alive in moments of intensity. And cold delivers intensity with brutal honesty. It doesn't flatter, it doesn't wait, it confronts. And that confrontation is holy. Every second you stay in that cold, you are hammering new neural circuits into existence. declaring to your nervous system, we do not bow to discomfort, we rise through it. The limbic system, especially the amygdala, governs fear and emotional reactivity, but it can be trained. Cold exposure activates it, and then offers you the chance to override it with conscious breath, with stillness, with choice. That is how warriors are made. That is how prophets are trained, not in silence and safety, but in storms they chose to enter. You become familiar with the edge, and that familiarity dissolves fear. You no longer react to the fire. You breathe through it, and something divine awakens when the body is brought under the rule of a disciplined mind. Fear loses its grip when faced repeatedly in a controlled environment. Cold becomes the proving ground for this. You enter it on purpose, you suffer by decision, you stay as an act of dominion, and what begins as physical becomes spiritual. You stop asking, how can I escape this? And begin declaring, how much more can I take? That shift is everything. Because if you can meet discomfort on your terms, you can meet any trial in life without folding. This is not about tolerance, it's about transformation. You are not learning how to survive stress, you are learning how to own it. Every exposure strips you of weakness and clothes you in strength. Your nervous system stops interpreting difficulty as danger. Your mind stops seeking the path of least resistance. You no longer pray for life to get easier, you prepare yourself to get stronger. Cold becomes the altar. Discomfort becomes the offering, and you rise from it not hardened but holy, not numb but ignited. There is a state the human brain can enter that is beyond motivation, beyond mood, beyond emotion. It is clarity. Not fleeting, not fragile, but forceful. Cold exposure, when done deliberately, is a doorway into that state. The moment the body touches cold, the mind is pulled out of the fog. There's no room for distraction, no time for overthinking. Every nerve is awake, every breath is intentional, and the noise of the world falls away. That is not suffering, that is sovereignty. In that moment, you are not confused about who you are. You are present, you are powerful, you are fully alive. This clarity is not a mental trick. It is a neurochemical reality. As the cold envelops you, the adrenal system ignites. Catecholamines are released, epinephrine and norepinephrine, elevating alertness, sharpening vision, amplifying mental precision. Dopamine surges not just as a response to pleasure, but as a declaration that your body has entered a state of aligned readiness. This cocktail of chemicals is not random. It is orchestrated. It is sacred. It is the body's way of saying you are built for more. Clarity doesn't come from avoidance. It comes from immersion, from choosing to walk into controlled adversity and command your physiology in the face of it. In cold exposure, you are not escaping reality. You are entering it more fully. You are practicing what it means to be unshaken, even when everything in your body screams to flee. That stillness, that laser focus, is not the absence of fear. It is its mastery. The prefrontal cortex, the seat of executive function, begins to dominate over the emotional brain. The storm inside doesn't disappear, it bows, and that submission of chaos to conscious breath, of panic to presence, is where clarity is born. You begin to notice how the cold does not lie, it does not pretend, it demands, it reveals. It calls forth a version of yourself that exists beneath excuses, beneath emotion, beneath ego. A version that is anchored, aligned, and alert. That version doesn't react. It responds. That version doesn't panic. It plans. That version isn't swayed by the temperature of the world. It sets the thermostat from within. Cold trains you to access that version at will. Not when conditions are perfect, but when your flesh trembles, when your lungs contract, when your thoughts begin to scatter, and you breathe, you center, you reclaim. And this state, this sacred clarity, is not temporary, it lingers, it echoes into your decisions, your conversations, your mission. You begin to live from a place of authority rather than emotion. You begin to command your energy rather than be consumed by it. Cold is the furnace where that power is refined. not by removing the heat of life, but by walking through it with eyes wide open. And every time you return to that place, that breath, that chill, you are reminding your body who leads. You are reminding your spirit what it was born to do.